And we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Well, hello and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
From Jaws to Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg is one of Hollywood's all-time greats, and now he's back with a new film, almost 50 years after Close Encounters. It's a return to the question of extraterrestrial life. Disclosure Day premiered in London tonight, where our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer managed to catch the man himself on the red carpet.
Steven Spielberg's fascination with extraterrestrial life has produced some notable cinematic classics.
One of the most beloved movies of all time.
But forget about the nostalgia of E.T. or the awe of Close Encounters. With Disclosure Day, the Oscar-winning filmmaker brings that theme firmly into the present. An A-list cast joining the man himself on the red carpet in London.
I have a big imagination. I believe there's a lot of interesting things happening right now in the world, and I took that, combined that, and told a story.
It sent me weak at the knees, the thought of meeting Steven Spielberg, let alone being in a film of his. Yeah, it was a very surreal and special experience.
Of course. I mean, I screamed when they said that he wanted to meet me, and I was like, when? Now? I'll just drop everything. And so I met him, and it was a surreal thing because he built our imagination as children. Like I don't remember many movies from a child, but I remember his.
Our relationship with the unknown is something the filmmaker has repeatedly returned to. In an era shaped by questions over transparency and misinformation, the film leans into today's real-world debates around public trust, government secrecy, and who gets to decide what we do and don't know.
How will disclosure change us?
Spielberg has said he feels Disclosure Day is more grounded in reality than his earlier Alien movies. The 2017 reporting on Pentagon UFO investigations and subsequent public hearings reigniting his interest. And while President Trump directed US agencies to declassify and publish government files related to UFOs back in February, so far what's been released hasn't exactly proven there's anything out there.
Everybody with smartphones that are eyewitness to extraordinary things, they can back up their eyewitness statements with video, and this is happening more and more and more. And I thought, after all of that, this is a good time to get back into the subject matter.
I'm frightened.
Early critics are calling this the filmmaker's strongest work in decades. If audiences respond in the same way, Spielberg may have delivered yet another cultural touchstone for the genre. Almost half a century on from Close Encounters, that would be quite an achievement. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Donald Trump has been speaking at the White House. He's touched on Iran, the war in Ukraine and Cuba. Let's just have a listen to what he had to say about his ambitions for the Caribbean island.
We have some very good plans for Cuba. I think, we have to get rid of the regime was very tough, very nasty. The difference is now they don't have money coming in. They had a lot of money coming in from Venezuela. They don't have any money coming. They had oil coming in. They had money coming in. But we're going to take care of Cuba.
Mr. President, sir.
And they, you know what? They want us to. The people want us there so badly.
Donald Trump there. Well, that's it for this week on The World. We're back Monday night from 9 o'clock. Bye for now.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking.
Thank you so much.
Trusting us to tell her story.
The battle for number 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive access.
Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget.
Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Tonight on The Wrap, Andy Burnham says that he wants to replace Keir Starmer. Labour's Andy Burnham says that a Labour leadership contest has already been launched and he wants to run. The Prime Minister promises Henry Novak's family that he will deliver a legacy and justice for the murdered teenager, and he accuses the world's richest man of trying to whip up division. How did Andrew get a bruised face? The former prince is pictured near his Sandringham home with a purple mark covering his right eye and cheek. And we catch up with legendary film director Steven Spielberg on the red carpet at the premiere of his new movie, Disclosure Day. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Michelle Donnellan and also Shami Chakrabarti, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers. A very good evening. Well, we start this hour with some breaking news. Andy Burnham has said in a television interview that he would run to replace Keir Starmer in a Labour leadership contest that he believes has already started. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is here in the studio with me, along with Michelle and Shami. John, first of all, what exactly did he have to say?
Well, he said that because Wes Streeting seems to have started it, he wants to get involved. Let me tell you exactly what he said. He said, I think Wes Streeting seems to have launched a leadership contest. So if that is running, I would seek to join it. Now, I'm a sort of interested party in all this because it was me a few weeks ago who got Wes Streeting to say at a Progress conference in London, come on, end the suspense. And this was just after he'd resigned from the cabinet, and he said, in answer to my question, we need a proper contest with the best candidates on the field, and I'll be standing. So Andy Burnham is right to say that
he has effectively already kicked his head off.
And Andy Burnham goes on, he's got to persuade Labour MPs to do the same, he says, but I think obviously to get their support. That's the only question. I've said to my team, let's have a proper look at this and let's develop a policy. So he's saying, Wes Streeting's already started it, so therefore I would seek to join it. And he's saying that he's already with his team talking about developing a policy. But he says, it's not me starting it, it's Wes Streeting that started it.
Shami, let's bring you in on that. Any real surprises in this for you?
It's not a surprise. It's not really hold the front page. So
it will be on the front page.
It will be, but it's not a desperate surprise. And it's not a surprise because John Craig is the kingmaker of the Labour Party, clearly,
and
the United Kingdom. I mean, there are things we're not supposed to talk about because of fairness rules, but it's a bit premature. It's not totally premature, but there are things that have to happen or not happen before we really get into what may happen in the Labour Party. But certainly no surprises that there are ambitions and we're not where we would like to be.
And Michelle, I mean, coming from a party that has seen defenestrations of prime ministers to replace them quickly with another, what do you make of all of this? Is it a good idea or not?
So I think that they don't have any choice, given that Starmer's position is completely untenable now and he's lost the confidence of his own parliamentary party. And when that happens, you literally can't govern then. And also, if you look at his own popularity rating in the country, that means that they've got to swap out their leader. However, I don't think it will actually improve their situation. I speak from experience, having been on that merry-go-round a number of times in the Conservative Party, and then you really evade trust in the electorate, who see this sort of callous nature of a party just swapping people out and pinning it all on that individual. So I don't think it's going to help their long-term fortunes, but I think that they're without any other choices.
OK.
I should say that within an hour of Andy Burnham saying what he's just said, Number 10 have issued a defiant statement from the Prime Minister saying, I'm not going anywhere. The Labour Party has a process for challenging a leader, says Number 10, and it has not been triggered. despite what Mr Burnham's saying about Mr Streeting. And strictly speaking, that is true, of course. The Prime Minister will not walk away from the mandate he was given just 2 years ago to build a stronger, fairer Britain.
We've heard that
It's not quite...
You turn if you want to.
Well, I was going to say, it's almost coming up and go if you think you're hard enough. The Prime Minister has been defiant, as he's not, as he says, going to walk away.
All right, it's going to keep us busy, I'm sure, tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister said today that he was profoundly humbled to meet Henry Novak's family in Downing Street. He promised to create a legacy that goes beyond his death. Police body cam footage showing the 18-year-old student in handcuffs as he lay dying has provoked outrage and allegations of two-tier policing. Henry Novak's family spent nearly an hour inside Downing Street. His parents say that they don't want his death to stir up hatred or divisions, a message echoed by political leaders.
Musk, again, has been interfering in our politics in the last few days, trying to whip up division. That is not who we are in Britain. In Britain, we are reasonable, tolerant people. When we have a terrible case like Henry's case, Henry Novak, we react calmly, as his family have done.
Politicising these issues is when one party tries to get political gain out of it. The only people who should gain now are young people across our country whose safety we're all concerned about, trust in the police being improved and the family getting closure and a meaningful outcome after the loss of Henry's life. It is very important to depoliticise situations, and the way we do that is by having politicians working together to get the right results, to get a solution, not just complaining about everything. We need to start talking about solutions.
Well, we'll just get some quick reaction from you both about what we heard there, primarily from the Prime Minister, Shami, who's been accused of being very much on the back foot on this tragic killing of Henry Novak and allowing Nigel Farage to set the agenda.
I don't think he's been on the back foot, and I agree with what he said. I have to say, having just for the first time heard Kemi Badenoch's comments, I was incredibly impressed that she's really drawn a line between her approach to this, actually quite a statesperson's approach to this, and what we've heard from Farage. She doesn't want to do the bandwagon whipping things up. She wants us to work together and find solutions. The Novak case is an absolute tragedy. Novak was murdered. The police turn up. Remember that the murderer's brother called the police. This is all in the judge's sentencing. So this is what we know. And of course, there is an investigation ongoing. They turn up in response to a call from the murderer's brother. So there's a narrative when they turn up on the scene as to who is the perpetrator and who is the victim. And then, of course, it turns out that the victim has been stabbed and they don't initially believe him. He says, I've been stabbed. He says, I can't breathe. Now, the thing is, whether or not one person's called the police or another person's called the police, whether or not one person started it or not, when somebody says, I've been stabbed, I cannot breathe, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. You attend to that before you put the handcuffs on, before you go in for law enforcement per se. So something went wrong there. I don't think it, to my mind, it doesn't readily snap of two-tier policing, but just a dumb mistake by people who rushed to a crime scene. I mean, I want to give some credit to the police who are rushing towards danger every time they, respond to a 999 call like that. I think the Musk-Farage approach is pretty outrageous, actually, and I think most people in this country will not warm to it.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that in a minute, but just a quick reaction from you, Michelle, perhaps responding to what Shami was saying about what we heard from Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah, so I think that she has got the tone very right, and this is a case about tone. And this is an awful, awful case, and everybody thinks about what if it was my child or somebody that I knew had been through that and that was the last moments of their life. And the police are meant to be there to protect us, and in that moment they failed him devastatingly. And that's frightening and terrifying for people up and down our country. But what we need to be making sure is that our politicians are not alarming and stirring and causing discontent to the point that people will go out there and riot. And I think everybody has free will, absolutely. But at the same time, we need our politicians to be mindful that they have platforms. They need to be responsible in the use of their language and the implications of that as well.
Yeah, and John, incredibly dignified interventions really from the parents of Henry Novak. Just tell us a bit more about that meeting with the Prime Minister today.
It started at 5 o'clock. It went on till just before 6 o'clock. They didn't enter 10 Downing Street via the front door, but as we've seen, they did come out of the front door. I politely asked if they wanted to come and talk to us, but they declined. We went straight to their cars, and they obviously, it made a big impression on the Prime Minister. You'll remember that on Monday, Mark Novak, Henry's father, spoke quite movingly and with emotion outside the court. On that occasion, he was criticising the fact that the killer was able to carry this ceremonial knife, this knife that Sikhs carry, for what the Home Secretary called during the week religious observance. Now, he was saying, and the father was saying, this cannot be right. You know, that this shouldn't be exempt, and so that was one of the issues that they raised with the Prime Minister.
I do need to bring you a bit of breaking news, John, to get your reaction on intervention from top level of the US administration here on this very story. The State Department has put out a statement on X. It reads, ideological conditioning and two-tiered policing are glaring symptoms of civilizational decline. They must be rejected across the West. The United States sends our condolences to the family of Henry Novak and the people of the United Kingdom at this troubling time. A little bit resonant of some of the commentary we've seen from Elon Musk as well.
Well, it's suggested that Nigel Farage has been trying to persuade the Americans, Trump and others, and the Republican Party to make a comment about what's happened here in the UK this week. It's not. I see that the statement has come from the department. It's not come from Marco Rubio or one of the leading Trump supporters, like, for example, J.D. Vance. It doesn't mention the UK, but it's pretty clear that it looks like a reference to that phrase, two-tiered policing. I mean, it's the one that Mr Farage has been talking about in the Commons this week, and it led to that fiery clash with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister firmly denied about two-tier policing in the UK.
Isn't it a bit odd that Mr Farage, who claims to lead a patriotic movement and has claimed to do this for many years, is seeking to get endorsement from the US President, and is sometimes taking his instructions from the US President and sometimes trying to get the US President to help him out when he's a fix. I'm not sure that the British electorate will take kindly to being told from outside, from whether it's from a billionaire or a millionaire president. I think this is a miscalculation as well as ill-judged by Mr Farage.
What have you made, Shami, of what the Prime Minister had to say about Elon Musk and his interventions? I mean, he's tweeted more than 110 times about UK politics over the last, I think, week or so, 3 times more than the number of times he's tweeted about SpaceX, which he's launching on the stock market in just over a week.
It's almost as if he's auditioning to be a future Bond villain. You know, that he sits on his Learjet or on planet Zog and pronounces about what's happening in our country. As I say, hardly a patriotic proposition if Farage is going to hitch his wagon to super billionaires in California. I don't think people in Britain will warm to it.
Michelle, do you sometimes need to stand back and think how quickly politics has evolved in getting these interventions from these American tech billionaires, getting the State Department putting out responses like that to something that's really a very domestic story?
Well, it's global news, isn't it? And I think we do have to unpack some of what Starmer said today, because I think, you know, Elon Musk is a free person. He can freely comment on anything he likes in relation to British politics, and so can anybody else in America. And look, we sit here and we talk about American politics, so we can't have it both ways. But at the same time, Musk has an incredible platform, and we did see his actions leading to 2 of the police officers being hounded and harassed and having to go almost underground. So that was a real devastating impact there. But I actually think Starmer's done a bit of an own goal today, because the reality is that he's elevated this. He's gone out there and he keeps saying, oh, Elon Musk has said this and he said that and he's interfering in our politics. So he's just, in my mind, let a load of people know that didn't know about it and made even more media coverage for Elon Musk. And
you've got to be careful.
Yeah, you have. And Elon Musk is obviously somebody that has a massive ego. I don't think that's any secret. So the best way to deal with it is not to talk about it. The more you talk about it, the more he's going to interact.
To talk about it,
yeah, but you're feeding that interaction, you're feeding that ego, and also elevating it up the news cycle. I think the best tactic is ignore it. Let's crack on. The Prime Minister's got a job to do. He should be doing that rather than commenting on Elon Musk.
Well, undoubtedly, we'll see what the papers across the spectrum have to say about all of that when we get to discussing them a bit later in the programme. Now, the former Prince Andrew has been photographed with a large, very large indeed, bruise on his face. The disgraced royal was pictured driving near his home in Norfolk. No official comment, though, about what happened to him, though I'm sure there's going to be lots of speculation. I'm not sure there's any point in us speculating about it. But, I mean, Shami, a reminder that he remains under investigation, and we were hearing today from one of the top prosecutors that it may take more than a year for these investigations with both Peter Mandelson and former Prince Andrew to come to fruition.
Look, these are the investigations we care about. Not investigating this bruise. I mean, he seems well enough to be driving and so on, but it just highlights that this is a very newsworthy man, and not I'm afraid for good reasons. And there are victims who feel that they've not had justice yet, probably on both sides of the Atlantic, and some of these powerful men, I'm afraid, do need to be held to account.
What do you think, Michelle?
I think every time he's in the papers, it just reminds us of what a complete stain he is to the royal family and to Great Britain, and what this says about our country internationally. I mean, let's not forget he was meant to be an ambassador for our country. That was what the trade envoy was all about, selling modern, progressive Britain, and he's done the opposite. And I just think it's a great tragedy, and the poor Queen would be, I'm sure, turning in her grave.
Well, I'm sure there will be plenty of speculation about that bruise, whether or not we think that that's the interesting bit of the story or not.
You have to get a medical expert in here to study the details.
I'm sure. Maybe other news channels will do that. We're going to do the serious stuff here on Sky News. Well, we can turn from the former Prince to Peter Mandelson, who's talking there about the linkages there with those investigations and the continuing fallout from that scandal. Labour grandee Harriet Harman has told the Electoral Dysfunction podcast that politicians should be banned from using disappearing messages. Let's have a listen.
I think that the idea of disappearing WhatsApps, I am suspicious about them. And if I would had my way, they would not have disappearing messages. That would not be allowed. If you were going to communicate with other colleagues in government about government business, then you should have proper messages, and they should not.
You just shouldn't have government by WhatsApp. Like it's just bad governance.
Yeah. Well, except that it's not bad governance if it's actually available, like emails are available. Yeah. There might be security implications. Yeah. But as far as the accountability things, I mean, government communications change with tech communications.
Well, it's a really interesting debate, isn't it? Michelle, I'm interested in your perspective. Somebody who's been a cabinet minister. Should people at the highest level of government and any elected politicians be using disappearing messages?
Yeah, so if you're doing actual formal work, so if you're messaging your private office, then you're not allowed to use disappearing messages. But I think it's a bit unrealistic to say you should just ban all politicians from having disappearing messages, because don't forget, you're friends with people as well. You'll be having social conversations. You'll be talking about other things. You might be arranging to meet outside of work. Your whole life is within that very network as well. So we're therefore saying to people, you can't have disappearing messages with anybody, even if it's a social or more political. So it would be very hard. And at the end of the day, how are we going to stop people just deleting messages? Because you can do that too. So I think people will always find a way around the issue if they've really got something to hide. Whereas actually we should be saying, electing the right people in the first place are less inclined to do that. And I think something that's come out that's really interesting in this week was obviously the leaked stuff to The Spectator, those WhatsApps, and where the heck have they come from? Yeah, because it's either Mandelson himself or the government have not complied with the humble address. Yeah, so they've come from somewhere, which doesn't quite add up.
I mean, who's got access?
But that would be a grave issue if they've.
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it. I'm just trying to. But I agree with you.
It makes it very murky and interesting.
Number 10 was asked today at the regular briefing for political correspondence, was it Lord Mandelson? And they said, oh, we're not going to get into speculation. But some people, I think, are calling it Mandy's revenge, aren't they?
Yeah.
But whoever it was, I mean, it's hugely embarrassing for Darren Jones, critical of... he admits he was consoling Peter Mandelson for being sacked. He admitted in the Commons last night that he had been influenced by Mandelson's reputation as a key power in the party. He was rude about Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves, while I was in Downing Street, actually, during the meeting with the family of Henry Novak, the Chancellor arrived back at number 11, so I naturally shouted at her, "What do you think of what Darren Jones said about you, Chancellor?" In she went to number number 11.
Yeah, well, it was kind of clear who has disappearing messages and who doesn't, wasn't it?
I think what Harriet Harman is suggesting is, how on earth do you achieve that? I don't even know.
It was an interesting exchange.
I don't know how to make messages disappear.
I can show you. I'll show you later. I'll show you later.
What did you think of it?
So I thought the exchange between Harriet and Ruth Davidson was really interesting, actually, because they both had important points. So Harriet essentially is saying, what happened to transparency? There's no point having freedom of information, arguably not even the duty of candour that we all want in the upcoming Hillsborough law, if people are resorting to such techniques. So Harriet's talking about transparency when Ruth Davidson says, but we don't want government by WhatsApp.
I think that's naive.
I think there are practical problems with both of these, but what they are representing is the importance of both transparency on the one hand and some element of formality, in a way, Michelle saying, well, I used my private office. I made a separation between political and government business on the one hand and my personal and social life. But when you've got the kind of club, the kind of gang that Mr. Mandelson and Mr. McSweeney were probably presiding over, there was a very blurred line between the social and the personal and the political.
And sadly, they had their phones stolen, didn't they? Both,
that was very convenient.
Morton McFeeney and now Nick Thomas-Symonds.
And one got a new phone as well, conveniently at the right time.
But interestingly, the Cabinet Office have said it's within the guidance if you're using disappearing messages in its role in limiting a build-up of messages. But what do you think about that? And that the expectation is on politicians that they screenshot anything that's important or related to policy.
I mean, maybe Michelle is ultimately right that it's very unrealistic. If people are going to behave in a dishonourable way, there's ultimately a limit you can draft rules, regulations, codes of conduct, and they will find a way around that. If you're running a little gang or a little boys' club, and you're all messaging each other and you're being scathing about some people, I mean, what the Mandelson kind of affair just reminds me of is this sense of profound entitlement. You know, you've been involved in scandals before in your political career. You come back, and we saw the note to David Lammy, "You'll never regret it." And
well, that was a handwritten note.
That was exactly.
That wasn't a WhatsApp.
That doesn't disappear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can disappear. Handwritten notes can disappear, and after FOI, lots of people said, "Oh, there'll be no emails anymore. It'll all be post-it notes on file." You know, where there's a will, there's a way. If what you're about is not running government in a way that we would aspire to, that is about transparency, that is about an element of formality and accountability. If you're running a little club with your mates it's very, very difficult to if that's the ethic, if that's the way people feel about their responsibility, it's very hard to
break that, whatever the technology.
But of course, that's all the negative side of it. I mean, having ministers being able to correspond with one another in seconds obviously makes government much more efficient and effective as well, because they can say, can I grab 5 minutes with you tomorrow, or have you seen this? And they can send each other
it was
a quick note,
necessary during COVID,
yeah,
wasn't it?
well, it's necessary all the time, because it means that it's 24 hours and it keeps things going, as long as you're not actually making a formal decision there and then, without the proper evidence base and without consulting other people. But it does keep things running in a much more smooth and facilitated way if it's done correctly.
And you do want cabinet ministers, of course. If you want cabinet government in the 21st century, you do want relationships between those cabinet ministers, not just being trotted into cabinet once a week and told what's what by the officials in number 10. So it's very tricky.
The Sir Humphreys must hate it because, of course, it bypasses them. It goes back to the argument when Tony Blair was criticised for his so-called sofa government without civil servants present. I mean, it means that ministers can talk to each other without any civil servants there taking notes.
So I remember when I was in and a journalist contacted the department saying, we've got this list of people with disappearing messages, Michelle's on it. And the department said, have you got disappearing messages? I was like, well, I don't know which groups I have and which I haven't. And it appeared that it was a default setting across them all. So they just said, OK, well, we'll knock it off, all of the ones with civil servants. And it was fine. And it doesn't matter because we've been recording all the conversations anyway. So if you've got a common sense, straightforward approach. It's
listening
manageable.
in on the conversations. You said recording.
Recording, as in recording the actions if they're in on it.
Well, as Shami was saying, it's a fascinating conversation on electoral dysfunction, and you can, of course, listen to that in full by going to the usual place where you get your podcasts. Do stay with us. We're going to be taking a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter.
I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Welcome back. Time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Well, the Mirror carries news of the former Prince Andrew being photographed with a bruise on his face, while reporting details as well about his rental income. It's the same story in The Telegraph, which claims that Andrew cashed in with secret rent deals. And the Daily Mail claims that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have never paid rent despite living in palace properties for nearly 2 decades. The grand old brute of York is how the Daily Star is reporting on those pictures of the former Duke. And the headline in The Sun, what a bloody cheek. The Metro accuses FIFA of sucking fans dry as they ban reusable water bottles in stadiums at the World Cup, meaning that fans will have to pay for their water despite the heat warnings. And The Eye carries an exclusive story claiming that the King had private concerns over Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. The Guardian has an interview with the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. And the Financial Times leads on AI revenues needing to surge around 100 times by 2030 for SpaceX to achieve its pitched valuation of nearly $2 trillion. And Kate shares in Mum's Joy is the headline in The Express, with a story about how the Princess of Wales was in hospital to congratulate a young woman at the end of her cancer treatment. Well, let's just go through some of those front pages with both of you. Shani, FT, we talked about it a little earlier on. I'm not going to talk about the SpaceX flotation, but rather Starmer's rebuke for Elon Musk of these various interventions, intense interventions over the Novak murder.
Well, clearly, Elon Musk, you know, he's one of the richest, I think he's probably at the moment the richest man in the world, and he and a few others are richer, more powerful than whole countries. And as far as they're concerned, the world is their oyster. They will interfere anywhere. To hell with democracy. You know, it's as if universal suffrage never happened. You know, prime ministers cower in the face of these people. So I think, on the one hand, I completely agree with Keir Starmer that this is an attempt to whip up division and to influence British politics. It's very bad behaviour, it's unacceptable. But Michelle made a point earlier that made me think about the balance you have to strike between, on the one hand, calling it out, but on the other hand, not further elevating it and giving it too much credence by responding to it. And I don't know the answer. I think it's a fine line to tread.
Well, I think Starmer is now appearing like he's banging on about Elon Musk and regularly pits these fights with him. And it doesn't get him anywhere. If anything, it just eggs Elon Musk on to continue and to interfere and gives him more ammunition. So I think it would be better to just sit back and ignore it. And also, one has to question, why has the Prime Minister got time to be going on about this? You know, there's enough going on. And obviously, whatever your view is on the debate around our police force, this is a horrendous, awful incident that has deeply affected a family and a community. And something is wrong within our police system to have allowed this to happen. And therefore, we need to solve that problem. We need to work out what the problem is.
There's an interesting transmission effect, though, as well, isn't there? Because I was just reading out a tweet in the last half an hour from the State Department, which used exactly some of that language, the two-tiered policing. So it's not just the tech billionaires wanting to stir up trouble.
So there's clearly... This slogan is one that certain people want repeated and repeated until it becomes the norm. I don't agree with it. If anything, if you look at the statistics on stop and search, etc., the historic problems with the police have not been about anti-white person racism. And I say that knowing full well that what happened in this case was wrong and really bad policing. But I don't personally think it was anti-white racism. I think it was the police not employing common sense and attending to somebody stabbing before they get into who should be arrested and who shouldn't. Nonetheless, the complaints body will investigate, but there's some very, very wealthy and powerful people who've decided to go with this two-tier slogan, and they are international. They are interfering in British politics. They are risking the kind of violence that we've already seen, and the police, whether they get things right or not, I've often been critical of the police, but they still run towards danger. We still need them as an essential of a civilised society, and we've got to be careful because people will stop wanting to be police officers, and some really good people will stop wanting to be police officers if we're not fair to them as well.
It creates a problem, doesn't it, for political leaders, Michelle? Particularly when it moves beyond Elon Musk with his enormous platform, and then starts coming out of the White House administration as well, talking about this two-tier policing. Hard for political parties to unify around this tragic event when they're getting these interventions from the White House.
Yeah, and look, as I said before, I don't think that Elon Musk or the White House shouldn't be commenting on international things, because it would be very it would be hypocrisy, because we regularly comment on issues and matters overseas. However, I think there is a difference between subscribing to this view that we have a two-tier police system versus acknowledging that there is some problems within our police, which is the camp that I would sit in and say that we have over-indexed and we have led to a situation where some police officers have questioned their own judgment, have delayed on matters. There's that guidance that came out from the National Policing Council, and that has led to some decision-making that is not appropriate and not right. And therefore, we need that investigation to take place, and we need action and we need solutions to prevent this from ever happening again.
I mean, contrast Michelle's tone with what we're reading about from the White House and Elon Musk. And so I'm sorry to say this, but it's a bit of a cheek, isn't it? Let's ask some black and brown people in the US how they feel about ICE officers ordered by the president to go into their states, which are supposed to be protected by our great American Constitution. Let's ask about two-tier policing under President Trump in the US.
Well, White House related, let's move on to the front of the eye, who have an exclusive story here. The King's private concerns over Trump's state visit to the UK. King said to be jittery and did not want to do it. Shami?
Well, if I were His Majesty, I'd be very cross to see anything like this in the paper. So either it's a fabrication or someone has breached their duty of trust. You know, the King is a human being and a rational human being. I would be flabbergasted if he didn't have some private concerns, before the state visit. And he's actually played a blinder in navigating very difficult territory on behalf of the UK in difficult circumstances with the president in particular. And he's done his very best, and he's done very well on behalf of the country. But of course he's a human being. He's got a difficult job when there's a state visit. Of course he must have had some private anxieties and concerns or nerves. So if there was an advisor in the palace or somewhere in the proximity of the King who is selling stories to newspapers or just gossiping, I think that's a terrible breach of trust.
Yeah, so I was Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And part of that role is to be the conduit, in effect, with the royal family, especially for big royal events of celebration and commiseration, etc. And my experience was that the royal family, especially the King, who was obviously the prince at the time, very hands-on and engaged in those conversations. So he definitely will have had opinions and wanted to steer things, because it's basically his job, isn't it? It would be natural for him to want to be involved in that. But I do think it is big breach of trust if this is true and it's been leaked out there, because you want the king to be able to be frank and to be honest with those around him.
They're saying that he was nervous because the invitation, if you remember, was offered shortly after Zelensky had that big blow-up in the Oval Office. And I did an interview with the Canadian Prime Minister, newly in post, who said that actually Canadians were, you know, pretty aghast that the UK had extended this state visit when he was threatening the sovereignty of Canada.
It would be odd if the king didn't have some anxieties, to say the least, about it. That doesn't mean he was in a position to veto it. He clearly honoured the number 10's wishes and participated brilliantly in the state visit. But if he can't voice to his close advisers any anxieties that he might have when he's doing his job, I think that's a very sad state of affairs.
And the way that our system is meant to work is that the monarch does actually check things, offer advice to the Prime Minister. That's why they have those regular meetings.
It's a constitutional role, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. He's not meant to be just a figurehead that we wheeled out for pictures.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a misunderstanding of the nature of the role.
Let's take the conversation on to another royal. And as we suspected, this photograph, quite extraordinary photograph of former Prince Andrew with an enormous, great shiner, features on the front of quite a few of the newspapers, along with really a more serious story, Shami, about questions being raised about the arrangements with his properties, what he was paying or what he was not paying.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he was paying and what he wasn't paying, and people are entitled to know whether this is public money or whether it's family money. I think people are entitled to have some transparency about that, particularly now as they feel so betrayed, as Michelle said earlier, by the fact that somebody who was yet another ambassador who's been serving their own interests in the worst possible way and not serving the national interest. So people are entitled to seek more transparency. But as I say, the royal family is independently very wealthy. So it's possible that this came from their family wealth, but people are entitled to transparency.
Even if it did, I think this is another sort of blow to his already deplorable reputation that's in the gutter, because it just makes him look like a bit of a freeloader that has sponged off his family, potentially, at the same time as abusing the British people's trust in a role that was given to him and potentially conducting criminal activity. And obviously we'll wait for that investigation to take place and see what comes of that.
Yes.
But he certainly knows how to tarnish the image of Britain. And as I said before, every time I see his picture, I just think it's not going to help our country at all.
And as you said before, what a contrast with the way that his mother, the late Queen, lived her life.
Yeah, the one of service, wasn't it? And this is one of...
Well, we need to leave that conversation there, take you to another story. It's a really interesting one. A British teenager has become the youngest person to have been sanctioned by Russia. This is 17-year-old Alexander Browder, sanctioned because he exposed an illicit cryptocurrency network and told us that he intends, despite being sanctioned, to continue his work.
It's a pretty funny story. So I'm in high school and I was sitting at the back of my economics class. I opened my laptop and I saw a Reuters headline stating that I was sanctioned. So it came as a surprise. The Russians' goal is to intimidate us and to try and shut us down. But I'm not backing down, and neither should anyone else.
Well, there we have it. He's emboldened by this sanction, which he saw sitting in the back of his economics class.
What a brave and brilliant young man.
I mean, he's cut from similar cloth as his father,
because
I suppose.
I mean, you know the family.
I do know the family, so yes. And he's been working on this report for a couple of years. He's been meticulously compiling all of this data.
So he's the son of the great Bill Browder.
Yes, who introduced the Magnitsky legislation.
Because his friend Sergei Magnitsky was murdered.
Indeed.
At Putin's
So he has introduced legislation in parliaments around the world to have the ability to sanction individuals rather than just countries. Absolutely. And his son has been picking up the mantle, trying to look at loopholes where some of these state actors have potentially been getting around sanctions.
Firstly, what a great example of, that you can be in sixth form and you can still use your skills, your research skills, to do such a great international service, not just a domestic public service. The second thing I would say is I am not an expert on this, but I have concerns about cryptocurrencies and the way that they can be used to evade the law in so many ways. And yet another reason why our senior politicians should not be accepting personal donations of, even small change like £5 million from crypto billionaires overseas.
Michelle, what do you want
to say?
Were you doing this when you were 17?
I wish I had been, but no. It's an incredibly wonderful story, and I'm sure that he's going to inspire other young people, and what a great role model, hey? And I love that video where he says, I was sat in high school, just as you do, kind of thing. And incredibly inspiring, and I think that he is going to be destined for great things, and now he can wear as a badge of honour this sanction from Putin.
Yeah.
Certainly.
In fact, I texted him when I saw that he'd been sanctioned. I texted him and said, "What do you make of this?" And he said, "Badge of honour." Exactly.
It's still brave, though.
It is really brave.
You think of what's happened to people who've stood up to Vladimir Putin, but as we hear from Zelensky today or yesterday, whenever it is, maybe the Russians themselves are getting tired now. I don't know.
Yeah. Astonishing stuff, isn't it? It's a lovely story. Well, Steven Spielberg, changing the subject, returns with a new alien sci-fi almost 50 years on from Close Encounters. We'll be talking about that after the break.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna.
We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing. We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Well, hello and thank you for watching. Tonight on The Wrap, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Cheap,
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Now, one of Hollywood's all-time greats, Steven Spielberg, is back with a new film. Almost 50 years after Close Encounters, it's a return to the question of extraterrestrial life. Disclosure Day premiered in London tonight, where our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer managed to catch the legendary director on the red carpet.
Steven Spielberg's fascination with extraterrestrial life has produced some notable cinematic classics.
One of the most beloved movies of all time.
But forget about the nostalgia of E.T. or the awe of Close Encounters. With Disclosure Day, the Oscar-winning filmmaker brings that theme firmly into the present. An A-list cast joining the man himself on the red carpet in London.
I have a big imagination. I believe there's a lot of interesting things happening right now in the world, and I took that, combined that, and told a story.
It sent me weak at the knees, the thought of meeting Steven Spielberg, let alone being in a film of his. Yeah, it was a very surreal and special experience.
Of course. I mean, I screamed when they said that he wanted to meet me, and I was like, when? Now? I'll just drop everything. And so I met him, and it was a surreal thing because he built our imagination as children. Like I don't remember many movies from a child, but I remember his.
Our relationship with the unknown is something the filmmaker has repeatedly returned to. In an era shaped by questions over transparency and misinformation, the film leans into today's real-world debates around public trust, government secrecy, and who gets to decide what we do and don't know.
How will disclosure change us?
Spielberg has said he feels Disclosure Day is more grounded in reality than his earlier Alien movies. The 2017 reporting on Pentagon UFO investigations and subsequent public hearings reigniting his interest. And while President Trump directed US agencies to declassify and publish government files related to UFOs back in February, so far what's been released hasn't exactly proven there's anything out there.
Everybody with smartphones that are eyewitness to extraordinary things, they can back up their eyewitness statements with video, and this is happening more and more and more. And I thought, after all of that, this is a good time to get back into the subject matter.
I'm frightened. Early critics are calling this the filmmaker's strongest work in decades. If audiences respond in the same way, Spielberg may have delivered yet another cultural touchstone for the genre. Almost half a century on from Close Encounters, that would be quite an achievement. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, what a legend. It's hard to know where to start with what we talk about, but I suppose we should just talk about, his epic filmography. You a Steven Spielberg fan, Shannon?
I mean, how can you not be?
You have a particular film that's
I do, and I think your view is if they press pause now, in 10 seconds, I think they could probably guess what my favourite Spielberg movie would be. And it's...
Michelle, can you guess what it is? Oh, she's already told me, so I'd be cheating.
it's Minority Report, which I think came out when I was probably Director of Liberty, and this concept of what if people think they can investigate pre-crime, they can decide who is going to commit a crime in the future. If that were plausible, what would the ramifications be for society and for everything we previously thought about in terms of fairness?
So many sort of deep questions of morality, aren't there, embedded in his films?
And sometimes, in sci-fi, like history movies, period pieces, can be sometimes the easiest way to deal with very dark and difficult political subjects. The Planet of the Apes movies of many decades ago, and the franchise ran for many years, started as being a critique on race politics in the US. but that's a gritty, difficult subject. You do it in ape costumes.
Take it to a different dimension.
And suddenly you can have those conversations. This is the greatness of Hollywood's popular cinema, that you can actually deal with really, really important issues in a gripping, entertaining way.
What about you, Michelle? What's your favourite Spielberg?
Oh, it's got to be E.T. It was one of them ones that when you were a child, you just watched again and
that
again
music,
and again.
you just know it instantly that it's E.T., don't
iconic.
you?
But what I love about this film is there's that rumour going round that that potentially it is based on truth and that there are aliens living amongst us and that this is the government of America's way of trying to get it out there in a soft way and through a film. But actually, I think that's more of a marketing strategy by the team behind this film to actually get more people talking about it. But I can't wait to see it. I have 2 very little children, so I don't think my husband and I are going to be heading to the cinema anytime soon, but it looks like a proper blockbuster.
Get a sitter.
Well, you haven't asked me what my favourite Spielberg is.
Please.
Jaws.
Another iconic one.
I mean, more than 50 years old now, but, you know, what an epic film.
It stands the test.
I
think you can re-watch a great movie whenever it was made and remember why it was so great. Just from your clip, it was nice to see some great British acting talent up there starring. Emily Blunt, of course, who is really, I think, one of the finest screen actors now of her generation.
Yes.
Good to see her there. It's going to be great.
Yeah, coming back. When are you going to go and see it?
Well, as soon as I can, I hope. As soon as I can.
Yeah, we don't want to talk too much about Boris Johnson's obsession with Jaws, do we? Doesn't he always riff about the mayor and closing the beach and all of that stuff? But
closing the beach.
We'll leave that. We'll leave that for another time. Just time now to have a quick look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
thank you so much,
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Tonight on The Wrap, the US State Department hits out at two-tiered policing following the death of Henry Novak. The Prime Minister promised the family that he will deliver legacy and justice for the murdered teenager after warning against those trying to whip up division. Labour's Andy Burnham says that he wants to replace Keir Starmer in Downing Street and that the race has already started. How did Andrew get a bruised face? The former prince is pictured near his Sandringham home with a purple mark covering his right eye and cheek. And we catch up with legendary film director Steven Spielberg on the red carpet at the premiere of his new movie, Disclosure Day. We'll be discussing the day's biggest stories tonight with Michelle Donnellan and Shami Chakrabarti. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Very good evening. Thank you for joining us here on The Wrap, where we start with breaking news in the last hour. The US State Department has criticised what it describes as ideological conditioning and two-tiered policing following the murder of British teenager Henry Novak. Just very quick reaction from you to that. Surprising or not, Shami?
It's not traditionally the way that a very close ally, including on security matters, behaves. The slogan, it's not just that they're wading into this delicate subject matter at a really, really difficult time. They're using a slogan that comes from Farage and Tommy Robinson and so on. And I think if the British public start believing, rightly or wrongly, that Nigel Farage is trying to get his chums in the White House to intervene to help him electorally, they will never forgive him, because that's not what patriotism looks like.
And Michelle, how do you think the Prime Minister best responds to this?
Well, first of all, I think it's typical of the current administration in America. They've been very vocal when it comes to the UK, including on issues like free speech, etc. But I think that the problem is that some people in the UK at the moment are using this topic as a political football, when actually we should be taking a step back and saying, OK, there are definitely some problems here. How are we going to fix it? And what do we need to do? Because we cannot be living in a country where any of our police think that this type of behaviour is acceptable, or that our public don't have full confidence in our police, or that they're getting advice and guidance that indicates that they should be treating people differently. That's the main principle, isn't it? That we are all equal under the eyes of the law.
But I have to say, I don't think that it's not immediately obvious to me that that's what was happening in this case.
Shami, we're going to come on and discuss this more fully in a moment. We do want to firstly bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. Evening to you, David. How surprising is this intervention?
Well, it is extraordinary. President Trump has repeatedly criticised the UK and Keir Starmer in particular over immigration and freedom of speech policies. But for it to choose this time and the tone of this statement in relation to the murder of Henry Novak will take many people by surprise. A short time ago, posting on social media, the US State Department said this: ideological conditioning and two-tiered policing are glaring symptoms of civilizational decline. They must be rejected across the West. The United States sends our condolences to the family of Henry Novak and the people of the United Kingdom at this troubling time. I think it is remarkable for two reasons, really. Firstly, that the United States State Department has chosen to make a statement like this after Prime Minister Keir Starmer had already criticised Elon Musk, a former member of the administration, for posting online about the murder of Henry Novak. He accused him of interfering in UK politics and attempting to whip up division. And then secondly, because the statement includes the term two-tier policing. The very words used by Nigel Farage, leader of Reform in the House of Commons earlier this week. Farage, of course, is a long-time friend and ally of President Trump. As I say, President Trump has long criticised the UK, but this statement takes it to a whole other level when you're talking about civilizational decline. We know the so-called special relationship between the UK and the US has been severely tested by the war in Iran. It was hoped, perhaps, that the recent state visit by King Charles would begin to build bridges, but it's fairly clear from the statement issued in the last hour that any hopes of that happening soon will be dashed now.
Yes. OK, David, thank you very much. Well, we can bring you that statement in full from the US Department of State. Sorry, David was just bringing that to us there. But let's get your reaction to that, John.
There will be irritation, if not annoyance. There will be suspicions that Nigel Farage has put the US government up to it. As David has said, these are phrases that Nigel Farage has used, and he used them in that pretty fiery clash with the Prime Minister at PMQs yesterday. I mean, I'm not quite sure what they mean by ideological conditioning. I suppose they're talking about the suggestion that which some opposition politicians have made about it's a point Chris Philp made in the chamber, that the police in this Novak case seem more concerned about racial accusations of racism than the attack with the knife. Must be rejected across the West. So it's not just talking about the UK there, but then the second paragraph does mention the UK. The US sends condolences to the family and the people of the UK at this troubling time. Well, I mean, I think I think a lot of senior Labour politicians just say, oh, it's just Trump, or it's just the US Republicans, the MAGA gang. It's stirring. It's Nigel Farage will no doubt say, "There, I told you so." But I think a lot of politicians have grown a bit tired with these statements from President Trump.
OK. I should say that the reference to ideological conditioning is a reference, we think, to the anti-racism training that the
yes, that's what I meant, actually. Yeah. Well, I have to say, you know, the Americans haven't got a great record with their policing, have they?
About ICE going into people's states, you know, ordered by the president and shooting Americans, you know. I mean, really, do we take lessons in civilisational decline from President Trump?
We shouldn't forget what this was all about, right? And there was a meeting that took place at Downing Street today with the family of Henry Novak and the Prime Minister. And after that meeting, Sir Keir Starmer said, Henry deserves a legacy that goes beyond this awful tragedy, and I am committed to making that happen. I'm determined that we do everything in our power to prevent other families from suffering such a devastating loss. There are difficult questions that need to be answered about the way the police handled Henry's murder. The Independent Office for Police Conduct are investigating. We will be unflinching in taking whatever action is required to right the wrongs in this case. John, you can tell us a little bit more about the meeting that he had today and perhaps reflect on whether what he thinks he achieved in trying to calm things down with that meeting has possibly been undone.
It's worth mentioning, of course, that Kemi Badenoch had a meeting with the family as well. You saw the pictures there. That was them leaving just before 6 o'clock. It was Henry Novak's father, Mark, and mother and stepmother, and they met for about an hour. The PM, Mr. Mark Novak, said outside court on Monday that he was very concerned about the fact that the killer was able to carry this ceremonial knife. And there have been calls for the government to look again at the knife crime laws. And also, of course, the issue you just mentioned, these diversity courses, call them what you like, that the police are said to have been on in Hampshire and elsewhere. And so that plenty for the PM to think about. He did concluded, the Prime Minister said in his statement, it's our duty now to ensure lessons are learned and and he talked about making sure justice is delivered. Well, there is, I think I'm right in saying, Lord Hermer has the Attorney General is reviewing the sentence, and so this, I mean, we're going to hear a lot more about this case, even though those meetings have now taken place. Nigel Farage wants a meeting with the family. Not sure he's going to get one after his controversial comments when he used the phrase pure cold rage. But the Prime Minister clearly tried to calm things down. He actually paid tribute to Kemi Badenoch in the House of Commons over what he called her approach and her tone.
Yeah, let me bring in Michelle on that.
Yeah, I think she has struck the right tone, because the reality is that we need to just fix what is wrong. We need to actually understand it rather than using it as a political football and banding it about for one's own prominence and positioning. And this family have been through utter hell. Like, I can't imagine what they must have been through. I'm the mother of 2 young sons, and I can only begin to think what they've been through. And then having the confidence to come out and to put the nation first and to ask that, you know, this doesn't cause the division that is then being whipped up, which doesn't get us anywhere, does it? What we need to do is we need to take a step back and we need to say, what is wrong in our policing system that has allowed this to happen? Where are these incidences happening? I don't subscribe to this view that we have a 2-tier policing system. I do think there are issues, and I do think that we have allowed an over-indexing where we've tried to over-correct for previous instances, and that's what's facilitated some of the slow decision-making and poor decision-making in these circumstances.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about that story. Another big story in the papers tomorrow. Andy Burnham has said in a television interview that he would run to replace Keir Starmer in a Labour leadership contest that he believes has already started. John, worst-kept secret, do you think, in Westminster? What exactly did he have to say?
Yeah, well, he's claiming that this has already been started by Wes Streeting. What he said was, in this television programme, I think Wes Streeting seems to have launched a leadership contest. So if that is running, I would seek to join it. So he's suggesting that Mr Streeting has fired the starting gun already. Well, that's true up to a point, because I was present, and in fact it was my question to Mr Streeting here at the Progress Conference. Didn't see you at the Progress Conference.
No, it's not my natural habitat.
No, it's the other wing of the party. And I said to him, because he made this great speech which sounded like a manifesto, setting out a manifesto, but he never actually said in the speech, I'm going to run. And I got the first question to him, and I said, come on, end the suspense. And he said, we need a proper contest with the best candidates on the field, and I will be standing. So that's is what Mr Streeting was saying. Now Andy Burnham is talking about how he'd have to persuade Labour MPs to support him. And he said, though, I've said to my team, let's have a proper look at this and let's develop a policy. But I can tell you, from number 10... they're fighting back. They're not just going to take this and say, oh, we'll shrug it off. But a number 10 spokesman said that the Labour Party has a process for challenging a leader. It has not been triggered. Well, that is strictly true, of course. It hasn't officially been triggered, despite what the 2 candidates, would-be candidates, say. The Prime Minister, this is the key bit, the Prime Minister will not walk away from the mandate he was given just 2 years ago to build a stronger, fairer Britain. So
I'm just looking at Michelle here and just wondering if this is triggering for you, right? As a party that just kept throwing out your Prime Ministers and
once you've done it once, it's a lot easier to do it another time, because then you think, well, we've already done it once, we've got to go again. So I think they're on a slippery slope. But what I think is really interesting about Andy Burnham's approach nowadays is he's developed this tactic where he tries to pause and reflect, and he did that after the Blair article, and he said, well, I will be responding thoroughly in the next day or whatever it was, and he keeps doing it and building this suspense. But with this one, we all knew that he was going to come out and say this. It wasn't exactly some breaking revelation. And I also love the way he's been very clear to labour the point, but I'm not the knifer. It wasn't me that you need to blame, because,
But another blow to the Prime Minister's authority, do you think?
I think in the end, what we're going to have to see is not just the personalities, but the idea, the values, the ideas, the policies, the programme, and some real answers to difficult questions about how to take on reform, how to deliver the change that people were promised. You know, last week I think it was that all these great men were firing off their essays, and of course there's a challenger who's not yet on the field, but clearly wishes he was.
Sounded a bit sarcastic when you said that, Shami.
Well, no, I mean Tony Blair. You know, we're forgetting Tony Blair and how he was firing off the big think piece from his think tank, which people were then responding to. He clearly wishes he was back on the field, but that's difficult to achieve. I don't know, perhaps not impossible if he's planning a comeback. But
he's younger than Jeremy Corbyn.
That must work. I mean, really, it's down to John, as you heard from John.
At this stage in the political
John
cycle,
is the
anything can
kingmaker.
happen.
John Craig is the kingmaker. He asks people questions at conferences, and suddenly the
He's not denying that.
The tectonic plates shift.
Well, I think I asked the question that everybody wanted to ask. I was fortunate that I got called first.
And I think that was perhaps the platform where Wes was planning to make his announcement. But as I say, what is very important is...
I thought it was John's incisive question.
No doubt. But if and when there's going to be this contest, it's incredibly important that the candidates set out with some specificity now their stall about what they believe in and how they're going to achieve it.
Well,
because it can't just be, you know, moving the deck.
Let's move on to talk about possibly the public figure in the country that has lower approval ratings at the moment. The former Prince Andrew has been photographed with a very large bruise on his face. We don't know what that was, but we can take you back to the picture of the former Prince Andrew. He was pictured driving near his home in Norfolk, a little less startled than some of the other pictures we've seen of him over the last few months. No official comment about what has happened to him. When you look at that photograph, Michelle, you just know that there's going to be loads of speculation about how he ended up with that on his face. It's important to remember, isn't it, that he is still under investigation of misconduct in public office, and we understand that that investigation may take as long as a year.
Yeah, or potentially even longer. It is a whopping big bruise, and I'm sure there will be a lot of speculation over the coming days as to what has caused that, but it's another reason for him to be in our newspapers and to remind us of the national stain that he is and his actions have had both on the royal family and also internationally. He was meant to be an ambassador going out there selling Britain as a modern progressive country that you want to invest in, and actually his actions have had the opposite impact and really brought down the reputation of the UK and continue to do so, and this just drip feeds it.
Shami, this photograph is on quite a lot of the papers. What do you want to say about it?
Well, look, I agree with you that I'm more interested in investigating Prince Andrew than his bruise, and I'm not qualified. I'm not a doctor. I'm not qualified to examine the bruise. But I think Michelle makes an important point about this ambassador role that he had. We've now got two big figures who are ambassadors who've pretty much disgraced their office. If I were running the Foreign Office at the moment, actually, I would want to talk to my colleagues about demonstrating what other ambassadors do on our behalf. You know, pushing some ambassadors forward who perhaps are doing really good work around the world on our behalf, because you don't want trust in the currency of the diplomatic service to fall.
Well,
but in fairness to the Foreign Office, they rang all the alarm bells.
Yeah.
And poor old Ollie Robbins got the sack. They warned about Peter Mandelson.
Of course.
But overruled by the Prime Minister.
But they've got to pick up the pieces, because it's very important for the future, whoever the Prime Minister is. You know, our diplomacy around the world is important, has in the past been incredibly important, will be important again for trade, for security. And we want bright young people to enter the diplomatic service. We don't want it to be a discredited profession, because some people have been more interested in self-service than public service.
Well, this feels like a good moment to turn from the former Prince to Peter Mandelson and the continuing fallout from the scandal. Labour grandee Harriet Harman told the Electoral Dysfunction podcast that politicians should be banned from using disappearing messages. Let's have a listen.
I think that the idea of disappearing WhatsApps, I am suspicious about them. And if I would have had my way, they would not have disappearing messages. That would not be allowed. If you were going to communicate with other colleagues in government about government business, then you should have proper messages and they should not be
You just shouldn't have government by WhatsApp. Like, it's just bad governance.
Yeah. Well, except that it's not bad governance if it's actually available, like emails are available. Yeah. There might be security implications. Yeah. But as far as the accountability things, I mean, government communications change with tech communications.
Really interesting point, isn't it, Michelle? What's your view on disappearing messages? Should they be part of the way politicians communicate?
Well, I just think this is really unrealistic because we're talking about mostly their personal phones. Obviously, on your actual ministerial phone, you shouldn't have disappearing messages. That would be a foolish thing to be done. But on your personal phone, you've got to remember, these are colleagues, but they're also friends. When you're in politics, your entire network, everybody that you know practically is in that political world. So they'll also be talking about what you're having for lunch, where you're going tonight, do you want to meet up after the division lobby? It's not just purely political things. And it'll all be jumbled in together. And you could make this ruling, you can't have disappearing messages. How are you going to stop those that are inclined to delete their messages? There has to be some form of trust within the system. If we fail to trust our politicians completely, then how are we going to enable and embolden them to make decisions?
Well, Shami, Michelle, John, thank you very much for the time being. Do stay with us. Plenty more after the break.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out!
What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can. We're in an area that's just been reclaimed. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting. The whole neighbourhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming. It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Well, he seems to feature in so many different stories, doesn't he, at the moment? We were talking, of course, about Elon Musk a little bit earlier. He's being attacked by the Labour Party on more than one issue. Jess Asatu, who is the MP for Lowestoft, said that she was suing his firm, XAI, over the design of its Grok chatbot tool. That's after it was used to create deepfake images of her. Well, earlier she spoke to my colleague, Kathy Newman, about her experience.
I had spoken up against the Grok scandal earlier this year in January, somebody who fights against violence against women and girls. I called on Elon Musk to stop this from happening to other women, and of course, I immediately became the victim myself.
And someone sort of nudified you, put you in a bikini?
Not nudification, but bikini pictures, you know, putting me in burqas. So, of course, oh, well, you don't like being in a bikini. Oh, we'll put you in a burqa instead. And then the final video was really disturbing. It was of a group of men who came behind me, chloroformed me, so I fainted, and then lifted up my skirts as if for a sexual assault.
What did that feel like when you saw that?
Well, scary, demeaning, humiliating. It makes you wonder about what the motivations are of people who do this.
Michelle, to you first, as former culture secretary and very familiar with the online safety legislation. That was pretty pioneering stuff at the time, but like instances like this are just evidence of how quickly legislation can be left behind, right, with the development of this technology.
Yeah, so I was in charge of that piece of legislation and rewrote it to make it sure it was more stringent for children, but it was always meant to be the first start along this journey because we had no legislation in this space at all before. And as you say, this is an area that is moving very quickly and we need to be keeping under current constant review. But I think that we've got to remember that these are big corporations and what they are fundamentally motivated by is profits. So unless people make a stand and unless the law enables and allows fines and financial penalties, they will continue to act in a way that just supports their business model. And that's why I think it's good now that we have the mechanisms in place to be able to speak their language, which is damaging them in the pockets, basically.
Shami, should this be for, you know, an MP to have to take this to High Court?
Well, no, look, ideally, and I hope that within my lifetime, you know, we can get to a global treaty, a global internet treaty, to deal with these developing technologies and how they're being used to in these pernicious ways, including to degrade women, including to interfere with elections, etc., etc. We must, and if you think that's impossible, well, we've done it in the past. We have treaties governing outer space, the oceans, civil aviation, etc., etc., war and peace. We are going to have to do this at an international level. But in the meantime, we don't do nothing. We need to do more in our domestic parliament. I'm on the Parliamentary Assembly to the Council of Europe. Within the Council of Europe, which is bigger than the EU, there are many countries that want us to move forward together in this area. But in the meantime, credit to Jess for what she's doing. Credit also to Michelle's colleague in the Lords, Charlotte Owen, who's been a real trailblazer on these issues. The courts are one place where we can try and claw some decency and get the rule of law back, because these tech bros, that the Musks of this world just think they are above democracy, above the law, above common decency, and they enrich themselves from this kind of use of the technology.
And it's another political dilemma, isn't it, John?
Well, critics of this government would say they've been far too slow to tackle this sort of problem, and also the social media ban for under-16s, which the Conservatives have been pushing in the House of Lords, defeated the government about 3 or 4 times, didn't they, in the Lords? And that was something that you mentioned, Charlotte Owen, I think, and Gabby Burton, who used to work for David Cameron, she was pushing this as well.
You do see this across the parties, actually. There are younger women politicians across party who are leading the charge on that, and it's very heartening to watch their work.
we talked about this problem before on the Wrap, about how this government just puts so many things out to consultation. I mean, I was hearing from a peer the other day that there's the demands for a ban on ticket touts at sporting events, and the government has got a sports bill going through Parliament, and all they've got to do is just pass an amendment, but they're dithering over that as well.
I also worry about the lobbying power, the sheer lobbying power of big tech.
Yeah.
And they behave like big tobacco used to behave, and big oil, and we must learn the lessons of the past and push back.
Well, let's have a look now at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Well, we've talked a lot about it. The Mirror carries news of the former Prince Andrew being photographed with a bruise on his face, while reporting details as well about his rental income. It's the same story in The Telegraph, which claims that Andrew cashed in with secret rent deals. The Times also reports on that story. The Daily Mail claims that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have never paid rent, despite living in palace properties for nearly 2 decades. The grand old bruise of York is how the Daily Star is reporting on those pictures of the former Duke. And the headline in The Sun, what a bloody cheek. The Metro, something totally different, accuses FIFA of sucking fans dry as they ban reusable water bottles in stadiums at the World Cup, meaning that fans are going to have to pay for water despite heat warnings.
Outrageous.
And The Eye carries an exclusive story claiming that the King had private concerns over Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. The Guardian has an interview with the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. And the Financial Times leads on AI revenues needing to surge around 100 times by 2030 for SpaceX to achieve its pitched valuation at IPO of nearly $2 trillion. Kate shares in mum's joy. That is the headline in The Express, with a story about how the Princess of Wales was in hospital to congratulate a young woman at the end of her cancer treatment. So plenty there for us to get into. We're going to have to start with double-page spread here in The Mirror. That's handy, it says, with that picture, which is in pretty much all of the papers, of former Prince Andrew. Shami, what do you make of this? And continued questions about his financial arrangements adds insult to injury, says expert in royal family's finances.
Well, this will run and run and run, certainly until the big investigation, the police investigations into his really most serious misconduct, alleged misconduct, are resolved. And anything the police can do to expedite matters, I think, would be a very good thing. On living without rent, etc., I think people are entitled to some transparency about this. Is it private family money, or is it somehow funded by the taxpayer? I think transparency is probably what people would look for.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to say about it, Michelle?
Well, I think this is not the last day that we see the papers having a field day with these puns for headlines.
No.
But
trying hard not to giggle.
Yes, exactly. But this is really bad news for the royal family once again. There's another string to this story now in relation to Andrew, by all intents and purposes, is being painted as a bit of a sponger who has coasted through and lived almost rent-free, is the allegation that is featuring in most of the papers tomorrow. And this is just going to anger people, because our royal family is meant to be one of service, of duty. That was certainly the ethos of the late Queen. And her son has very much let her down and let the brand down and let Great Britain down with his actions. And who knows what's going to come.
And if this
investigation,
police investigation, is going to take as long as a year, these stories
are going to rumble on
and keep coming, aren't they?
Yeah, and to be fair, the royal family handled this in the first place very well, I thought, and they came out of it in a good place. But a year of this is going to be difficult for them to weather.
Let's shift gear. The Times has a story here about NHS staff facing a ban on their ability to wear political badges. What do you think, Shami? Should they be allowed to wear whatever badges they want?
I think we've got to be careful to get the balance right here. I can understand that in certain circumstances, certain slogans or badges might be a distraction from caring for in clinical situations for patients. But there is such a thing as free speech. There is such a thing as people still being a human being even when they're at work. And I think we need to get the balance right.
Michelle, I mean, the goal of this, and Lord Mann was on all the airwaves, wasn't he, talking about it, is because of a rise in anti-Semitism.
Exactly, and I think Lord Mann's done some excellent work here, and what he's found is that members of the Jewish community, in some cases, are not going to see their doctor when they've got health problems because they don't feel comfortable and they feel like they feel completely off-put going, and we shouldn't live in a society that is allowing that to happen. But when we think about it, our medical services, they are providing a piece of work, aren't they? They are there doing their jobs day in, day out. If you came to work and you were being very political, that wouldn't be allowed. If a policeman was going to work and being very political, if somebody in an office was going and being very political, so why should we allow that in our healthcare system? So I think this is the right thing to do, to say that everybody should feel comfortable and confident to go and seek medical care, be that at your dentist, your doctors, your hospital. Let's just leave the politics at home, wear what you want in your own free time, in the hours that you're working, be professional. I think that's not an unreasonable ask.
I know, but in some places people have been told off for wearing rainbow lanyards or, we allow, for example, rightly, people to wear crosses and Stars of David.
But that's not a political thing, that's a religious thing. So I think the two are very, very different.
No, I don't think they're that different. There comes a point when I think you're right that there's got to be proportionality here, and I think it's right that there is going to be guidance. But I don't think it's very easy to glibly say there's a complete distinction between one expression of your personality and another, and say everybody's got to be a good little Chinese worker and wear a uniform with no personal expression at all. Let's see what guidance comes out of this and where the balance is struck.
There's going to be difficult judgment calls, aren't there? Well, plenty to talk about there. We will be taking a look at more of those top stories in tomorrow's papers just after the break, so stay with me.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Well, we're getting deep into the papers, tomorrow's papers, and a bit of a shifting gear here. In the Eye has a story about political donations, specifically Reform given £9 million in the first quarter of the year, the largest amount, Shami, given to any political party in that period. That's a statement of the time.
So how is this taking back control and sovereignty, and how is it patriotic to be funded by a crypto billionaire based in Thailand? I think there's a real contradiction at the heart of Reform, which is just this evening we've been discussing, getting your chums in the White House to pick up your slogans, and now taking millions and millions of pounds. And of course, this is in addition to the personal donation to Mr. Farage himself, which I think was £5 million from this same Mr. Christopher Harborne. In an earlier story, we were discussing brave, brilliant, plucky Alexander Browder, who is keeping a register of cryptocurrencies and how they might be used for nefarious purposes. So I think in a couple of years' time, we will celebrate 100 years of mass suffrage in this country, where we said the country will be run by the people, for the people, and not just by the elites. And now we're looking at elites not even in this country, but elsewhere in the world, trying to influence our politics. I think it's really dangerous. There's going to be a representation of the people bill. It's in the King's speech. We're going to have to look at what can be done. And there'll be a genuine conversation, I think, across democratic political parties about what the limits of these big donations and, in particular, foreign donations should be.
Are you concerned, Michelle, about the provenance of some of these donations, also bearing in mind that Reform received more donations in the first quarter than the Conservatives?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I mean, this is part of our democratic system, that political parties are not funded by the state, and quite rightly, they have to seek private donations. And it's up to those parties to make a good case to appeal to people and individuals to give money. Would I prefer that these individuals were giving it to the Conservative Party? Of course, but they're not. And the Conservatives came in second with £6 million. I think it's up to these people. If they want to give their hard-earned cash away to the Reform Party, that's down to them. They have to be permissible donors, and they obviously meet that criteria.
Shami, you're not
I'm worried about
liking what Michelle's saying there.
I agree with Michelle, by the way, that I'm not one for state funding of political parties. I think political parties that can't persuade people to give a few quid via their union or a business or an individual, they don't have legitimacy. But what I do have concerns about are these large sums coming, in particular, from overseas, from people who aren't paying their taxes here in Britain, who are not invested in this country.
Does it matter? Well, you have to meet permissible donor requirements, and this individual obviously does, and he is a British citizen.
But maybe the requirements should be tightened. Maybe the requirements should be tightened, and maybe the limits should be...
I don't think we should get too much into... because we obviously have strict limits when we enter PERDA and into election periods when your actual bang for buck happens when you're spending. But I think your main objection is that it's coming from crypto, but I would argue that we have to operate, and our political system has to operate in the modern world. And as we advance and use new forms of a currency and use technology more, therefore we need to update.
I think my main objection at the moment is these are effectively overseas donations, and you've got the possibility of interference from overseas, not just at election time, but all the time. And by the way, even beyond this, I'm concerned about some think tanks that are very political players in our system and where they're getting their donations from. I think it's time for a real debate based on transparency about how we fund our politics and what is and isn't acceptable. And I think we're going to be revisiting this in legislation in the months to come.
Do you agree? So I think we are vulnerable to foreign interference in many layers of our democracy, including this one. But that could happen from somebody who is within the country who is posing. You know, look at the threats we've already seen to Westminster. And therefore, I think that we need to up our game in terms of the checks and the processes and making sure that that foreign interference is not happening in this way. I actually think it'd be more likely to happen from within, so it was less obvious.
Just final word from each of you on the front of the Metro. FIFA sucking fans dry with charging them for water, not letting them bring in their refillables. What do you think, Shani?
So yet again, this theme of these big international organisations that are above common decency, above the expectations of the people they're supposed to be serving. You know,
on top of the ticket prices.
On top of the ticket prices, you can't. And also, what about the environment? And what about keeping people hydrated in the heat?
Final word from you, Michelle? I think this is a disgrace. It's pure profiteering, and it's making football, which is meant to be a game for everybody, you know, from the little kids on the street right the way to the Premier League, an elitist sport. They're pricing people literally out of it.
Yeah, well, we haven't got long to wait, have we, before all of that kicks off. I don't know if you're football fans, but I know I'm about to lose my husband once it starts. A remarkable start to the summer for England's cricketers at Lord's. Plenty more sport for you after the break.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress. I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes. This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Durna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear-gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Well, hello and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Well, we can get all the latest now from Sky Sports News with James.
Brendan, we haven't spoken to you since the end of the World Cup, after which there was a review. Lots of things seemed up in the air at that stage. Do you think you're fortunate to be given the chance to complete the job you started?
That wasn't really up to me. I was keen to carry on in the job because I did feel as if, you know, we've made some significant progress in the last 4 years, but the job isn't done. There's still some growth to go. I think our best days are in front of us as a cricket side. I think a lot of the stuff that we've developed over the last 4 years will allow us to shape our side as we move forward. I think, yes, we do need to make some improvements. Yes, we do need to become a smarter cricket team when the game's at its on a knife edge or the pressure's at its highest. But don't throw out what's worked previously, what's given us the base to be able to start to think about finishing off this product and making a cricket team which can compete against the best teams in the world consistently.
We'll come on to what those improvements might be, but from the point of which the review announced that the management stays in place to now, we've had 6 rounds of championship games, and given so much was up in the air and so many places perhaps up for grabs, would it have been helpful to be here for some of that cricket?
Look, we're very fortunate in being with English cricket that we have a very broad, very vast amount of people that can assist us in making sure that we identify every single player, or no player falls through the cracks. We have, from our county insight group now, which has been set up onto our scouts, our analysts, I think through even our Lions program. I'm thinking, you know, the Ed Barneys, the David Courts, all these guys who sit within English cricket, who are filtering information through to us consistently. Selection doesn't start when we sit down at the table and start picking the side. It starts a lot broader than that and a lot earlier than that. So you're always on the phone. You're always talking and being engaged in things anyway. I don't think it needs me standing on the boundary rope to.
But have you been watching in New Zealand?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, everything's on the stream, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
How much?
Watching, yeah. I feel like I've got a reasonable amount of idea of what's going on. I think you're never going to cover everything, but I don't think anyone could. I don't think it's realistic either. But look, I'm very confident in the systems that we have in place, that our players are identified, and when we do sit down for our selection discussions, I feel like we cover off those that we need to. I'm also really fortunate, I guess, you know, when Rob Key rang me and mentioned about taking on the white ball job, he was very mindful of the fact that being on the road 10 months a year on year, is quite difficult and demanding, as you can attest to in your role. It can be difficult and demanding at times. So
does it suggest you've got too much on your plate? No,
I don't think so. I think providing you're able to still take some of those breaks. Well, I think it does. It gives you the clarity when you have a little break. It gives you a bit of clarity and a bit of time to reflect on where you've been and where you want to go in the job that you're doing.
Let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the unsettled, rather cool conditions look set to last into next week, bringing strong winds and further heavy showers or longer spells of rain. There'll be a mild but quite windy start to the day with sunny spells and widespread blustery showers, some prolonged. They'll be concentrated in the north and the west at first, developing more widely across southern and eastern parts this morning, bringing a risk of hail and thunder. Rather cool for early summer, with a stiff wind making it feel even cooler for many. The afternoon will bring little change, although southwestern England may well turn mainly dry. Tomorrow will be similar, although lighter winds and fewer showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that was The Wrap. Thank you, as ever, for watching. All of the top stories coming up right here on Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news.